So, welcome to the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone interview series, where we engage thought leaders about the challenges they have had stepping outside their comfort zones in their lives and work, and also advice that they have for young people interested in developing their leadership potential. Today, we have with us a very special guest, Tal Ben-Shahar. Tal is an American and Israeli teacher and writer in the areas of positive psychology and leadership. As a lecturer at Harvard University, Tal created two of the most popular courses in Harvard's history. He's subsequently written several best-selling books, and in 2011 co-founded Potentialife with Angus Ridgway, a company that provides leadership programs based on the science of behavioral change to organizations, schools, and sports organizations globally. I should also mention that Tal and I both graduated from the same Ph.D. program at Harvard. I didn't want to leave that part out. So thank you so much for being here, Tal.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here.
So thanks for coming. And let me start with the first question, which is about comfort zones. So I'd love you to think about a time when you've had to step outside of your comfort zone, personally, professionally. What was it like? What were the challenges? How did you overcome them? Any advice? Let's start there.
Great. So first of all, I must say that right now I'm out of my comfort zone. More generally, it is when I'm on stage, in front of an audience, in front of a camera. I do feel out of my comfort zone because I'm naturally an introvert. Now, I feel very comfortable being in front of my computer and typing up my books or lecture notes. But when it comes to lecturing, that's a lot more challenging. And, I remember probably 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, when I decided that my path in life was to become a teacher. That was my calling. I really had to deal with my stage fright, my stage anxiety. And initially, the way I approached it, having been an athlete for many years, played squash, I said, okay, so I'm gonna really be tough about it, and I'm gonna do it just like going on court, head first into the abyss. But then I read people like Viktor Frankl, who writes about ironic processing, and Daniel Wagner, who was a professor in our PhD program. And I realized that the best approach may not be to go in harder and tougher, but on the contrary, to be a lot more accepting, to, in a sense, surrender to the difficulty and the hardship and the challenge, and what I've later come to call to give myself the permission to be human. In other words, to accept the anxiety that I felt on stage or just before going on stage, and to go with the flow, so to speak. And that really helped me a lot, because when I fought the anxiety, when I said I have to get rid of this fear of public speaking, it actually only got worse. Whereas when I accepted it, when I embraced the challenge, that became a lot easier, a lot more manageable.
So can I actually? This is really interesting. Can I just ask a clarifying question? Was it that you felt anxiety about performing? You felt anxiety while performing, but also you felt anxious about feeling anxious? Was it that?
Great. Yeah, so that's a great question. And this is something that I only understood much later. But there are actually two levels of anxiety, two levels of fear. The first level is you can call it the primal one, the natural one, which is, when we are on stage, when we're observed, we feel some apprehension. Some people more than others. Introverts feel more than extroverts when with other people. However, that's just one level. The second level is anxiety over the anxiety. And that is the difficult part, because that's when it becomes debilitating in terms of the ability to think straight, to and to do one's best. So the original anxiety, the primal anxiety, that's natural, it's fine, it also passes after a while. But the second level anxiety is what makes things a lot worse. So it was the second level anxiety that actually went away over time as I embraced the first level anxiety.
It's interesting. So going back to squash, because I know you were a nationally ranked squash player, if not the number one. I forget the story. I do remember being in seminars with you in graduate school, and I remember you used to eat a lot of yogurt. I think it was it was to keep up your energy, if I remember correctly. So actually, I'd just be curious. The sports analogy is interesting. So your initial impulse was to fight through it, that second layer. What would that actually mean? Does that mean suppress it? Does that mean deny it? Like, what exactly can you? I mean, because fighting through is a metaphor, obviously, and I guess in some ways it's all a metaphor. But can you build it out a little bit?
Sure. So in sports, the sound bite or the guidance for so many athletes is no pain, no gain, right? So if it's difficult, if it's hard, just try even harder. And you'll get over it. So, you can't get over your anxiety. Well, try harder and then you'll get over your anxiety. And, when you're working out in the gym, sometimes that's the right thing to do, sometimes. But on stage or in many other situations, social and otherwise, the right thing is not to fight harder. The right thing is to surrender. But surrender not in the sense of resigning. So it's not like saying, okay, I'm feeling down now, so I'm just going to vegetate in front of the television for 3 months and do nothing. No, it's accepting the fact that I'm feeling down or accepting the fact that I'm feeling anxious and then asking what would be the most appropriate action. And the most appropriate action may be to lie down and do nothing and cry or just feel anxious. Or it may be to go out and do something. But the appropriate action, we're more likely to find it once we accept the emotion. So it's very important to distinguish between emotion and action. Emotion is what I feel. It's natural. Everyone experiences anxiety at times. What I do with that, that's up to me.
And you said that this didn't happen immediately in some form of an epiphany. It took some time. If someone listening to this, and I imagine, many people are afraid of public speaking, it's right up there with the most, stressful situations that people have. And nowadays, couple that with the idea of, thought leaders and TED Talks, and, there's more pressure than ever, really, I think, to kind of become a recognized expert and so on. And I do think this public speaking issue is challenging for people. How did you... Just say, I'd love just one more word or two just about how you got there. How did you get to the point of being able to surrender, as you say, or to accept the anxiety or to cut yourself slack or to, I don't know, to fall into it as opposed to suppress it and push it and fight through it? What got you there?
Good. So this is where, the second part of what I call active acceptance comes in. So the first part is accepting it, embracing it, surrendering to it. The second part is acting. And doing. So I'm a big believer in taking action. So if this is out of my comfort zone, just go ahead and do it. With all the experiences that entails. So rather than overthink it, rather than ruminating about it, just go ahead. Jump into the deep end. So in my particular case, it was about going and standing in front of an audience. Many times, I've done it thousands of times by now, and I still get nervous before a lecture. I still get nervous before an interview, even if it's with a friend. Because I've done it so many times, it's a lot easier, and also I don't make a big deal out of it. So I have the first level anxiety. How interesting! There's a beautiful phrase by Oxford psychologist Mark Williams, who talks about looking at our emotions or the physical manifestations of our emotions with friendly curiosity. I love that phrase, friendly curiosity. So I'm looking at my anxiety, oh, how interesting, I'm feeling anxious, not making a big deal out of it. And then certainly with experience, it becomes a lot easier to deal with.
It sounds like it's part perspective taking and part sort of empathy for yourself in some ways.
Exactly. So it's self-compassion.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so that's I imagine that'll be quite helpful for folks. I'd like to move to question number 2, which is, both of us work with and know and have worked with lots and lots of young people who are in universities, going off into the quote unquote real world. What advice would you give young people interested in developing their leadership potential or their leadership skills, or both? I think sometimes young people get intimidated about the idea of leadership, and it just seems so grandiose. What advice would you give those people?
Yeah, things very often look grandiose or difficult or challenging until we start doing them. And once we start doing them, then it becomes easier. It's a little bit like I like the Wizard of Oz. He's so ominous and so scary. But then the dog opens the curtain, and that's the Wizard of Oz. So once you take action, once you do something, you realize that it's not such a big deal. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I'm also a big fan, and that's related to taking action as well, of dividing and conquering. We don't have to do it all at once. When I think of writing a book, it's overwhelming. I mean, it's so many pages, so many ideas that all have to come together. Excuse me. It seems near impossible. However, if I say, okay, well, today I'm writing 1,000 words, 1,500 words max, then day after day after day, and it adds up, and eventually it's a book, or a chapter a week. Eventually it's a book. So dividing and conquering, making it less ominous in our mind's eye.
So
and finally, just related to what I said earlier, accepting the fact that yes, there are scary experiences, and there are scary endeavors. And that's okay. It's just being alive.
Being alive. I like it. In how would someone find an experience? So, I like your perspective that it's action oriented, and, it really resonates with me too, that, you do want to take that leap. And I think sometimes when you're able to take a leap, it demystifies things. Everything you've built up in your mind is a little bit different from the reality. But how do you take the leap into any leadership activity as a 22, 23-year-old? Like, what can you do? I imagine a lot of people listening to this or watching this would say, I'm not a leader. How am I supposed to step into a leadership opportunity? Maybe they're wrong. I would just be curious what you might think about that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, I'm a strong believer in the fact that there is leadership opportunity in just about anything that we do. So, I remember myself in that situation as a student, and I certainly remember many of my students being so stressed over finding the exact right job right out of college, or 2 years later, finding the exact right career path. And I don't think there is an exact right career path, or if there is, there are many of them, because we can have leadership experiences, we can have character building experiences whenever and wherever we are. The point is to experience. And when we see something that requires work, or something that requires our attention, and especially if we're a little bit apprehensive about doing it, we should go forth and do it. And as I said, there are leadership opportunities everywhere. That's one thing. The second thing, I'm a big believer in observing people. Observing our boss, observing our colleague, observing someone who's 2 years older than we are, someone whom we admire, reading biographies. That's a good way of observing the greatest people throughout history, and asking ourselves, taking a step back once in a while, and asking, what resonates with me? What can I connect to? and then experimenting with that, imitating. Oscar Wilde is purported to have said that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So let's flatter those people whom we admire and imitate them. There's nothing wrong with that.
So take action, observe others, and I also hear in what you're saying, this will be my last question here, something about going inside as well, because ultimately, I imagine for you to really grow into the idea that you could be a leader, you have to somehow see yourself as a leader. And so you're watching others, you're taking action, but what's the role of self-reflection and sense-making inside yourself?
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up, because if you look at how growth takes place, it's always, or almost always, when there are two elements. One is action, doing. The other is reflection, thinking. So it's when the two combine, when reflection and action go hand in hand, when you act on your reflection and then reflect on your action and then act again on that reflection, that's when you have the upward spiral of personal growth. I've put the two words together, reflection and action, into the word reflection, which to me captures the easy path, not the easy, but the path that is available to all of us for growth, reflection, combining action and reflection.
I like it, reflection. I really appreciate your coming on with me today. These are great tips, and I think people will see a lot of value in what you have to say. So thank you again. It was great to talk with you.
Great. Thank you for taking me out of my comfort zone.